My sisters and brothers, I greet you all with the love and peace of the Lord. I invite you to meditate together with me on the Holy Word of God of 6th March 2022, the first Lenten Sunday. The focus of our reflection: the greatness of Christian life is not to have temptations at all, but to face them, to fight them, and to overcome them. In today's Gospel, we have the episode of the temptations of Jesus. They are three. They take place in the wilderness. They happen after 40 days of fasting and prayer. And soon after them, Jesus begins his public ministry. We can pick up different indicators from this narrative of temptations. One indicator: temptations are willed or allowed by God. They form part of human life and divine mission. For we are told that Jesus was led by the Spirit to be tempted. Therefore, temptations are quite real in everyone's life. No one is exempted, and one need not feel guilty or ashamed of them. In the light of the teaching of Saint Francis de Sales, what makes one blameworthy is not having or getting temptations, but entertaining them, indulging in them, and consenting to them. The second indicator: Jesus is in full solidarity with our human struggle. The fact that even Jesus himself was tempted shows that God partakes in the struggle of human fragility. He became one like us in everything except sin. Jesus is sinless and remains so. Yet, this does not exempt him from the struggle to remain sinless. As divine, he is sinless, but as a human, he had to confront the assaults of the tempter. This is what makes him praiseworthy. He remains sinless even amidst a sinful situation. This makes both his divinity and humanity more convincing. His divinity shines amidst humanity, and his humanity shines amidst divinity. Third indicator: the temptations of Jesus are summary temptations. This would mean they are not necessarily literally happened temptations. We are not sure whether Jesus was factually tempted to change stones into bread, to worship Satan to gain the whole world, or to jump down from a height. Rather, they summarize the whole life struggle of Jesus. There were always temptations to use his divine power for self-interest, to test God, and to seek worldly riches and powers. Fourth indicator: the temptations of Jesus are allusive to Israel in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 8 verse 3, chapter 6 verses 13 and 16. The first temptation about food alludes to Israel in the desert, how they grumble and complain about food and drink. The second temptation alludes to how Israel was allured by the world, the material possessions, and false gods again and again. The third temptation alludes to how Israel stubbornly and adamantly tests God in spite of all his numerous mighty works. The fifth indicator, the temptations of Jesus are suggestive and indicative of our own temptations. In a simple way, the temptations of Jesus can be summarized, categorized as physical, material, and social. The temptation to change stones into bread, eat and thus satisfy the hunger, indicates our frequent temptation for the physical things like food and drink, physical pleasures, and easy and temporary gratifications. The temptation to worship Satan and gain the world, its powers and riches, indicates the temptation for the material things and powers, the constant allurement for money, possessions, and domination. The temptation to jump down from the height and remain unharmed, protected by God's angels, indicates our temptation for name, fame, and cheap popularity through shortcuts. The sixth indicator, the crux of temptations, is self-seeking and self-glory. In each of the three temptations, there is seeking, self-interest, and self-glory. It is in terms of physical satisfaction, material accumulation, and social recognition and domination. So often we are assaulted by these temptations. Just one glance is enough. We can easily see how these three temptations are ruling high. Flesh, power, money, and cheap glory dominate today's world, and the church is no exemption. What then are the remedies? Follow the way of Jesus. Let the spiritual sublimate the physical. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Let loyalty to God surpass worldly allurements. You shall worship the Lord your God alone. Let the trust in God overpower the tendency to test God. Do not put God to test. And now the direction and the directive for our life, in a life that is constantly attacked and even inflicted by temptations. Let us arm ourselves with the weapons of prayer, fasting, and charity. They help us to cling to God, to be self-restrained and unselfishly self-giving.